Classic cars are usually remembered for beauty and performance, but some were just plain weird. Strange designs, bizarre engineering, and market flops that left everyone scratching their heads. Today, we're looking at 8 of the weirdest oldtimers ever made. From three-wheeled death traps to cars that tried to float on water. These are the true oddballs of automotive history. Number 1. Reliant Robin, 1973 to 2002. The Reliant Robin is easily one of the most mocked cars in history. This British three-wheeler looked like a quirky little family car, but it had one massive flaw. It tipped over far too easily. With one wheel at the front and 2 at the back, the Robin had terrible stability, and even normal cornering could send it rolling onto its side. Powered by a tiny 850cc 4-cylinder engine, producing just 40 horsepower, it could reach a modest top speed of 85 miles per hour, but most drivers never dared push it that far. The car was light, thanks to its fiberglass body, and it had one redeeming factor. In the UK, it could be driven with a motorcycle license, which helped sales among budget-conscious buyers. New, it sold for around £2,000, making it affordable, but also cheap in every sense of the word. Pop culture made it infamous, especially through Top Gear, where it was flipped over again and again for laughs. Today, it's remembered not as a classic, but as one of the strangest cars Britain ever produced. Number 2. Amphicar 770, 1961 to 1968. The Amphicar 770 was an ambitious German experiment, a car that could also operate as a boat. On paper, it sounded revolutionary. In reality, it became one of the strangest automotive flops of the 1960s. Powered by a 1.2-liter Triumph 4-cylinder engine, producing just 43 horsepower, it reached a road top speed of only 70 miles per hour, and a water cruising speed of about 7 knots, hence the name 770. With a new price of $3,000 in the US, about $28,000 today, it wasn't cheap, especially considering it performed poorly both as a car and as a boat. Owners complained that it leaked, rusted quickly, and was painfully underpowered. Still, it has a cult following, and you can even find old footage of President Lyndon B. Johnson using one to prank guests at his ranch by driving into a lake. Despite fewer than 4,000 ever being built, its strange concept and unique design secured it a permanent spot on the list of bizarre oldtimers. Number 3. Messerschmitt KR200, 1955 to 1964. After World War II, Messerschmitt, once famous for building fighter planes, tried to reinvent itself in the automotive world with one of the strangest microcars ever made, the Messerschmitt KR200. This tiny three-wheeler looked less like a car and more like the cockpit of a small aircraft, complete with a clear bubble canopy that gave it its bubble car nickname. Power came from a minuscule 191cc single-cylinder engine making just 10 horsepower, which was only enough to push it to a top speed of about 56 miles per hour, barely fast enough for highways. Inside, it featured unusual tandem seating, where the passenger sat directly behind the driver, like in a fighter jet. Selling for around 2,000 German marks, roughly $5,000 today, it was pitched as a cheap, efficient mobility solution during Germany's post-war recovery. While it did provide affordable transport, its bizarre styling and underwhelming performance meant it was never taken too seriously. Today, though, the KR200 has become a quirky collector's item and a reminder of how desperate and inventive car makers were in the aftermath of the war. Number 4. Stout Scarab, 1935 to 1946. Often called the world's first minivan, the Stout Scarab was decades ahead of its time, but also way too weird to succeed. Designed by William Stout, it featured a futuristic, beetle-like body with Art Deco styling and a flexible interior that could be rearranged like a living room. Under the hood was a Ford V8 producing 97 horsepower, enough to push it to around 80 miles per hour. But it wasn't the performance that killed the Scarab, it was the price. At $5,000 in the 1930s, over $100,000 today, it was outrageously expensive, costing more than a Cadillac or a Packard. Only about 9 were ever built, and buyers simply weren't ready for such an oddball design. Today, the Stout Scarab is seen as a visionary concept, but at the time, it failed spectacularly because people didn't want a car that looked like a giant bug on wheels. Number 5. Peel P50, 1962 to 1965. The Peel P50 holds the Guinness World Record as the smallest production car ever made, and it's also one of the strangest. Built on the Isle of Man, this tiny three-wheeler was just 54 inches long and 39 inches wide, smaller than some motorcycles. It was powered by a 49cc engine producing just 4.2 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 38 miles per hour. It had no reverse gear, so if you needed to back up, you had to physically get out and drag it. The P50 originally sold for 199 pounds, about 3,500 pounds today, making it one of the cheapest cars in history. It was marketed as a city commuter for one adult and a shopping bag, but it was completely impractical. Top Gear famously drove one through an office building, highlighting just how ridiculous it was. Only about 50 originals were made, and while it's now worth over $100,000 to collectors, it remains one of the weirdest failures in automotive history. Number 6. Chrysler Turbine Car, 1963. The Chrysler Turbine Car was one of the boldest experiments of the 1960s. Instead of a traditional piston engine, it used a turbine engine, similar to what you'd find in a jet aircraft. Chrysler hand-built 55 of these futuristic coupes, each powered by a turbine producing 130 horsepower, capable of running on almost any fuel: gasoline, kerosene, even tequila. It could reach speeds of 120 miles per hour, but the car's Achilles heel was its practicality. It was loud, had sluggish acceleration, and the turbine engines were incredibly expensive to manufacture. Priced far higher than typical cars of the era, Chrysler never officially sold them. Instead, they loaned them out to select families for testing. Most of the cars were later destroyed, leaving only a handful surviving today. Footage of the turbine car is still widely available, and it remains one of the strangest and most ambitious failures ever attempted by a major car company. Number 7. Ford Edsel, 1958 to 1960. The Ford Edsel has gone down as one of the biggest failures in automotive history, a car remembered less for what it offered and more for how badly it flopped. Marketed with over-the-top promises as the car of the future, Ford poured millions into its 1958 launch, complete with flashy advertising campaigns and celebrity endorsements, building massive public expectations. Under the hood, it wasn't actually bad. Buyers could choose from a range of V8 engines, including a massive 6.7-liter power plant producing 345 horsepower, which at the time was plenty to move a full-size sedan with authority. Prices ranged from $2,500 to $3,800, roughly $25,000, $40,000 today, depending on the trim. So it wasn't outrageously priced for what it offered. But the problem came down to its awkward styling, especially the vertical oval grille that quickly earned nicknames and became the butt of countless jokes. Number 8. Citroën Ami 6, 1961 to 1978. The Citroën Ami 6 is one of those cars that turned heads for all the wrong reasons. Its most controversial feature was the reverse-raked rear window, paired with awkward proportions that made it look more like a design experiment than a finished car. Under the hood, it carried a tiny 602cc flat-twin engine making just 22 horsepower, barely enough to push it to 65 miles per hour. Priced at around 6,500 francs at launch, roughly $1,300 then, or about $12,000 today. It was meant to be affordable, and in France it actually sold decently thanks to Citroën's loyal fan base. Outside of its home market though, people found it strange and even laughable. Still, it wasn't without merit. The car offered excellent visibility, a smooth ride, and impressive comfort for its size. Even so, the Ami 6 remains remembered less for its practicality and more as one of the quirkiest, weirdest looking cars of its era. And there you have it, 8 of the weirdest old-timers ever made. From three-wheel disasters like the Reliant Robin to futuristic failures like the Chrysler Turbine Car, these oddballs prove that innovation doesn't always mean success. Some were too ambitious, others poorly executed, and a few just plain strange. Yet every one of them left its mark on automotive history. Whether you laugh at the Peel P50's tiny size or shake your head at the Edsel's flop, one thing is certain: these bizarre classics will always stand out.